Assalamu alaikum and welcome. My name is Ahmad Khan. I'm a professor of Islamic studies at the American University in Cairo, and I have with me again Mr. Waleed Arafa, an award winning Muslim architect. Today, in our discussion, we're going to continue looking at the way in which Islamic thought and civilization has impacted Waleed Arafa in his own incredible architectural achievements and his thinking around design, space, and building. Waleed, welcome back.
Thank you.
In our last discussion, we had finished on a slightly melancholic note. Melancholic in the sense that you noted how architecture has a responsibility, and that responsibility is not being fulfilled. This is a responsibility that architecture has to the earth, the planet, its resources, but also to the human being. Can you speak something about this responsibility? Is it something that you feel, and how do you try to contribute towards solving it and improving the situation that we have?
Well, this again is based on the idea that we don't own this universe. It is a gift, it is on loan. We are borrowing from it to uh, maintain a balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already instilled in it. And all that we are required to do is to maintain and respect this balance that Allah has already put in there. And this is what is known as human beings as being the Khalifa, the vice regent, but also maybe the stewards.
Yes.
Because when you give someone something towards a certain end, you don't use it as you wish. You have to use it in the way that it was meant and given to you. Um, of course, then we have the very obvious and self-enforcing laws of nature, something like gravity, something like the fact that water is necessary for everything, for every living being, and so on. And but at the same time, it seems like we're entrusted with a contradictory or seemingly contradictory task, which is reordering material that already exists in the natural world towards certain functions and meanings that are required by mankind to do. So we are asked in the Quran openly to walk the face of the earth and find out about things and so on, and contemplate
Yes.
God's creation. So that needs a bit of deconstruction. A mountain is there, we look at it, but we may need to quarry some stone from it. But then when we quarry that precious stone, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to build with it things that serve ego, vanity, that will disturb other creatures, that will disturb the balance? I don't think so.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be doing so. So that means, in order to do that and tread carefully, we need to understand the natural order, the natural harmony, and we need to hold it in a respectable manner because we look at it as the will of Allah. And that we cannot deal with the will of Allah in a disrespecting manner or disregarding manner. No, we have to deal with it with all caution and respect. And then we need to, and that cannot happen unless we have an end goal.
Yes.
And the end goal is, again, takes us back to meaning. Why are we here? The 10 grand questions of philosophy. Who created us? Who brought us here? Who are we? Where are we going? What are we meant to do in this time? And all the other grand questions of philosophy.
The secret of human existence.
Which creates the answers of which creates a certain worldview. So some other worldviews will say nobody created, there's no such thing as creation, so on. And then their architecture ensues from this worldview.
Yeah. I find that very important because you mentioned the Quran, and one of the things that the scholars of the Quran mention is that it's very important to understand how the ethics of the Quran, its message to mankind, manifests itself in three spheres of ethics. Mufassirun, the interpreters of the Quran, they say Number one, the Quran is telling us about what are our ethics to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to believe in Him, to worship Him, to love Him, and so on and so forth. And they say that and this is at the very beginning of the Quran, we have the Basmala,
Mhm.
in which the Basmala tells us who Allah is,
Mhm.
and then it says that He is the All Merciful and He is the All Compassionate. And then they say that the second sphere is who is the human being
Mm.
and how the human being must tend inwardly to themselves, right? To purify themselves, to have this tazkiyah, which is mentioned in the Quran in several places. And then they say that the third sphere of ethics pertains to how man has to be to his environment, the social world, whether that's family, whether it's friends, but also the natural world that we inhabit. And so the Quran has this inward looking
Mhm.
movement to the human being, and that the human being has to purify themselves. But it's almost as if through that purification, man can have a proper outlook on their social environment and the natural world around them. So it seems as if the Quran, of course, beautifully, majestically harmonizes these three elements. And it seems to me that we're coming back to this again and again. This idea that there has to be harmony between the inward and the outward. And the absence of this is what brings about chaos, or in our case, environmental destruction. And so, how much of this thinking goes into, is it part of the planning stage for you, or is it something that you feel that you're already rooted in through your experiences with Muslim scholars and institutions?
Well, it's a frame of mind,
Mm,
and every design process, every project that I'm commissioned, that I start working on, then I the question becomes not questioning these principles. These principles are there, and they're there to stay. It is a matter of how to apply it to this particular situation. As I said, which is time and space. So Kenya is not Egypt, is not Morocco.
mm,
They're all created by God, and they all need to be respected equally. And so you start finding the cues for respect. Respect. You cannot respect something that you don't understand, can you?
mm, yeah,
So you need to understand. You understand the history, the sociology, the topography, the even the presence of certain building materials or the lack thereof, the economy, budget, all of these things are interconnected, and we need to understand them in order to reach that one solution or that few number of solutions, architectural solutions out of an infinite number of solutions, and that's what makes a certain building resonate with people, even with people that are not from that place and time.
mm,
So people will go all the way to India to look at the Taj Mahal because it speaks to them. It speaks to the inner nature that God has embedded within them beyond the local idiom, even,
mm,
which is also something that we need to respect. But some things are universal. Everybody, I mean, look at Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. He's born in the Persian world at the time, like he spoke Persian, and then he also went to Konya.
mm,
But what he has written is best selling
mm,
in the 21st century in North America.
mm,
How can you explain this? Because he touches upon something that has been embedded in every human being by none but Allah Himself.
mm.
So he speaks at the universal level, although the examples may come from his environment and time and so on. Um, I think,
Yeah. This is, in many ways, what we're talking about here is the importance of preserving tradition.
mhm,
Okay? And in many ways, I'm thinking now of younger people and younger viewers who might be deciding on their futures and careers. And tradition is a very foreign idea
mhm,
in some ways. It's also considered in some circles to be a backwards idea. And what strikes me is that this is my own experience, but it's also something I heard from my teachers,
Mhm.
the mashayikh. When we go to a place, an architectural feat, a monument, a masjid, a khanqa, a madrasa, yes, there is meaning preserved in the building,
Mhm.
but there is also meaning contained within the building. What I mean by this is that certain prayers were performed there, certain,
Absolutely.
um, I don't want to say rituals because rituals is in some ways doesn't do justice to the idea of ibadah, but I
Mhm.
would say acts of love and devotion
Right.
were done there. Um, and so how can we convey this idea of preserving meaning within a building that isn't just material, it isn't just materiality? And is that something that you think about when you design and think about the architectural design of a monument? Not just what people will think when they look, but how people will feel when they do their acts of love and devotion within these places.
Well, it's again a quest of harmony because if once people go into a space and they're performing acts of worship and dedication and love, as you beautifully put it, they're going to be in a certain state. And that state, I'm as an architect, I'm not responsible for that. I cannot tell people what to do in the place.
Yes.
But my role is to create the space or to attempt to create the space in a way that once they go into that, I don't want to use the word vibe, but I mean that wavelength,
Hmm. Hmm.
it will not be against the space, or the space, the wavelength coming from the space is not going to be against it.
Rather, it complements.
They're going to become in unison.
Mm,
And that is a continuous loop that is a beautiful one, not a vicious one,
mhm.
as we usually say, vicious loop. But this is a beautiful one because then a place can be beautiful because of what was performed in it, and then people come and they find the result, and so that pushes them or motivates them to make to perform similar deeds because they want to be, because people are always looking for harmony. You don't want to be uneasy, you want to be harmonious, and it becomes a circle. So whether it's an architect who created a place that preaches that, so people come into it and become that, like when we're all loud on the street and then we go into a place like Sultan Hassan, and then suddenly you feel like you need to whisper, because the place is telling you, calm down,
Mhm.
get connected. Okay, it's the architectural move facilitated that.
Mm.
But it also could be the other way around because, funny enough, and that can take us into the how we define architecture generally, but also Islamic architecture, is that I've been in places that were not maybe necessarily perfect in their architecture, but
Yes.
they were beautified through the years and years of the beautiful acts that were performed in them, that covers the lack of order
Yes.
or architectural order in a place. I don't think this is a perfect thing. It's a testament to the power and devotion of the people and what
Yes.
they were doing in the place. But of course, what we're trying to seek is both. So one can have, when you stand for prayer, you, as Imam Ghazali says, you purify your clothes. Every Muslim does that. Okay, nobody prays while their clothes are not tahir in a
Yes.
physical sense,
Mm.
but not everybody succeeds in making their heart tahir.
Yes.
And if you can manage to bring
Mm.
both, the physical and metaphysical are one, then you're there.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, I love this idea, and I'm sure it's something that our viewers also feel that when you go to a place, particularly one that's a product of Islamic civilization, places have a message for each and every one of us. And I think that's a lovely idea and conviction, rather, to end on. I'd like to thank you very much, Waleed, for this wonderful discussion. Like I said, we've had discussions like this over the years. this feels like an entirely new discussion. I found out things about you and your ideas that I'd never heard before. So thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and we will have more discussions with Waleed Arafa in our coming episodes. Assalamu alaikum.